kids grow up eventually, and some of them become really high performing individuals. And just because you're doing really well and you're performing really well doesn't mean you're immune to OCD or the effects of it, correct?
Yes, absolutely.
Speak about that to us. I think that that would be an interesting education for our audience.
I think that there's some overlap. I mean, we know that there's a lot of overlap between OCD and things like perfectionism. And so I think that you have a lot of people that end up at places like Harvard, MIT, BU, BC, who have these overlapping tendencies. And there's ways in which they're what they've been doing their whole life. Like, a lot of my clients will say, well, my double checking and rechecking and reassurance seeking and seeking validation, all these things are why I'm here at Harvard. Like, that's how I got here, right? I got here by double checking my
Right.
paper 15 times at night. I got here by checking with my teachers about every single assignment 15 times, right? And so there's this way in which some of those behaviors end up getting reinforced and do
Yeah.
fuel success, right? And I think it can be really hard for people to pick apart, okay, what is me? What is perfectionism and my desire to excel, succeed at the highest levels? And then what is potentially OCD?
Right.
So sometimes we're seeing people that are getting this diagnosis for the first time.
Yeah.
Other times we're seeing people who got this diagnosis when they were very young. They somehow found a way to fuel a lot of these things into ways that worked for them. And then they get to college and it's not working anymore. And that's how they end up in our office.
I'm glad you brought that up too, because sometimes I meet people and they want to try to convince me that the reason they're successful is because they have OCD, which would
100%.
mean that my job would be to give OCD to people so that they could become successful. Right. Yeah.
Exactly.
Uh, I think you're successful despite OCD, not because of OCD. And I don't know that people who check their papers 15 times really enjoy that experience whatsoever. And obviously you and I know from research that the more you check, the less confidence you actually have. So if rechecking things made papers better, why do I have less confidence in the work that I did as I check it more often? Right.
Yeah,
Mhm.
exactly. And I hear that all of the time, whether we're talking about OCD compulsions or self-compassion. It's, well, I've gotten here. If I've gotten here by being hard on myself and critical of myself, and I've gotten here because I've been hypervigilant, right? So it's really hard for people to think about doing things any differently, despite the fact that they're on academic probation because they can't hand in their assignments because they're spending way too much time on every single assignment,
100%. Yeah. Right.
or because they're not getting to class on time because they're tied up with washing or rechecking things or whatever it is at home.
Yeah. Yeah, I've never walked up to someone and said, "Hey, it looks like you're having a tough day. How about a compulsion?" That's just not the way to help somebody through the experience of it,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, and I think too, for a lot of these folks, identity ends up getting tied to self-worth and achievement in terms of external validation, right? These are people who their whole lives they worked really hard and they got the award, the accolade, the praise, the acceptance to this prestigious program, right? So externally, they're getting a lot of feedback. Good job. You're doing great. Yes, yes, yes. And that's how they have internalized, I'm doing a good job. They get to a place like Harvard now, and all of a sudden, they're in a sea of other people who, same thing, accolade, award, this or
Yeah.
that. And they have no ability to internally gauge how they're doing, right? Most I mean, I think a lot of people can say, hey, you know what, I'm working hard on this. I know I'm working hard. I know I'm giving my all. And if I make a mistake or it's not perfect, I, you know, like I know that I did my due diligence, right? For a lot of these people that also have OCD, there's this fear of, well, I don't know if I'm doing a good job. There's no one that's sitting over my little shoulder telling me in this very moment that I'm getting the A plus or the accolade or the award. So the only way for me to continue to be sure of that is to keep rechecking, keep redoing, keep rechecking.
Yeah. And when you go from being the one in your school who was the top notch person to being in a school full of them, you're not special anymore, are you? And
I
that's an
know.
identity shift also for a lot of people, right? Now, who
It
am I? And mhm,
It is. And also too, I mean, there's like immense wealth at Harvard too. There's people from all sorts of prestigious backgrounds. And I think, you know, imposter syndrome is real. You know, I
mhm.
see it more with those students than probably any other population I work with. Um, so, you know, I think in a good way, a lot of them are find out, hey, I think I have OCD, or I think this is something I want to address. And fortunately, because they work hard and do their homework and find what evidence-based treatment is the best to treat them, you know, they come in and they're ready to do ACT, they're ready to do ERP or ICBT or whatever it is that they heard. And so that's a joy to work with for
Mhm.
sure. Um, but yeah, I would say that the environment can definitely breed those sorts of things.
What's your goal at the end of a work then with someone who's such a high achiever? What do you hope they're going to get out of the therapy experience and how they're going to move forward after treatment?
I think so. A lot of it is that self compassion work and working on internal validation, right? Not in a self reassuring way, but the willingness to give up seeking certainty and needing 100% sure as a goal. I think another big goal for people like that is developing that psychological flexibility and the flexibility to kind of, you know, I have this project that I want to do, and I have friends that I want to make too, right? The willingness to open up their lives. Most of the people that we see are spending so much time on compulsions that they're actually not like, they're not doing any of the fun stuff
Right.
that is involved in college, right? They're terrified too, right? So much of it is, you know, what do you want to be doing? What's important to you? And a lot of people have struggled to identify values because their value is A plus success, um, external validation, and now but they made it. They're at Harvard. They're there. Their grades. So a lot of the times it's about building a more flexible life, helping people identify their values, opening things back up, creating new relationships, the willingness to give up perfection at times. And I never say the goal here is for you to fail a test or, you know, do poorly on something that is important for your future, but it is to see what happens. Like, let's just see what happens if we don't check it 5 times. Maybe let's check it twice.
Yeah. Are you willing to take a risk, right? Hmm.
Yeah. And, you know, from an inhibitory learning standpoint, these are people who are really good learners. And so a lot of that stuff really does stick. They really do um, have a lot of those amazing aha moments that we love
Right.
to see with ERP.
Yeah, and for those of you not familiar with inhibitory learning, it's really learning a new way to behave and practicing that, and doing that makes the recall of that behavior and that way of doing it easier, and the old way kind of fades into the background, hopefully, so that it's less accessible for you to use as an option of how to respond to something.
Yeah, and also
Mhm.
just when we are surprised by something,
Oh, well, there.
anything
Yeah.
in life, like, oh my God, did you know that he started walking when he was one? Like that, you know, we remember things that we're surprised by. So if the client says, no, I will fail this if I do not triple, quadruple check. Let's try. Let's take
Let's
a
try it.
behavioral experiment. And then they go, whoa,
Hmm.
and I got an A. You know, I mean, almost always still coming back with a
Yeah.
very good grade.
I think a fundamental question for a lot of people, especially for high achievers in these situations, is it worth the risk? And I think that you have to look at that risk in both ways. Is it worth the risk to maintain OCD for the rest of your life and have it ruling things? Or is it worth the risk to do something opposite of it and just see what happens?
Exactly. And I think there's that goal of getting to college or the grad school or whatever it is can feel like, well, that's always what I've been working towards and nothing else has mattered. But then they have to have a kind of aha moment when they get to college of, well, is this it? Is this how I want to be forever? They see people around them making friends, having relationships. I've had clients that, are in grad school and they're afraid to date because of their OCD, right? Getting canceled in some way. And the core, so many people I think have these, especially of this perfectionistic, high achieving demographic. There's a lot of, if I get canceled, everything I work for will be for nothing, right? Because so much of that core fear comes back to everything I've worked for could be taken away. And so, yeah, there does feel like there's a lot of risk.
Your job is to help motivate people to take the risk. One of my favorite phrases is from Ireland. It's only an Irish person can tell you to go to hell and make you look forward to the journey. And sometimes I think about ERP that way, where we're going to ask you to do something really difficult and we're going to get you really excited to be doing that really difficult
Yeah.
thing. Right. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, how do I guess to answer, how do I do that? I think sometimes I do try to share success stories, obviously not giving
Sure.
other people information, but to say, hey, these are the ways in which ERP have positively impacted the lives of other people who struggle with perfectionism and XYZ. I try to take examples of what it means to live an ERP lifestyle in our everyday lives as well. But I think a huge part of it is talking with a person and really helping them identify their values and what is life going to look like if you continue on this way. I always think of, I think it's an ACT exercise. And of course, I wouldn't use this with somebody that was very depressed, but it's the funeral exercise where you have someone envision what would be said at their eulogy
Mm-hmm.
if
Mm-hmm.
they continue to live their life in service to OCD.
Yeah.
So, sometimes what is it gonna, who shared that meme a long time ago as a gravestone, which just said almost figured it out or something like that.
Yeah. Probably Hirschfield. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it was him. Right.
Mm-hmm.
But truly, what is going to happen? What is life going to look like
Right.
a year from now, 5 years from now, 20 years from now? Because this is snowballed to live in service of this. And I think it can be powerful to share some of those other stories because it's so easy with people that have OCD say, well, I'm the exception. I'm at
I'm
Harvard.
special.
And
Yeah.
like
Mm-hmm.
I can't risk it. I get it if you are, whatever, but this is special for me.
Yeah. Yeah. I like to ask people, will you spend the rest of your life sitting next to your tombstone when you'll be 6 feet and wondering when you'll be 6 feet under it? Or will you have a great time and on the day of your death arrive at your tombstone and say, well, that was fun?
Yeah, that was fun.
And just
Exactly.
sadly, there's a lot of people just sitting next to their grave wondering, when is it going to happen? When is it going to happen? And they miss out on living their life, unfortunately.
Yeah. I mean, I hear that all the time with people that have health related OCD. They say, well, I'd rather just know that I'm going to get cancer this year and probably die than live the rest of the year not knowing if I'm going to get cancer or not. It's like,
Yeah. People say that to me, and then I bring up that my wife died of cancer, and I say, you don't want that. I mean,
yeah, well,
from personal experience, I can tell you that I don't think that that's really what you want. As much as on the idea, it may seem like it would make it easier. Once you get it,
no, of
then the
course.
can of worms that it opens up. Well, and how many times do you and I see this even in our work, where someone will have OCD, we'll be working with them, and then something else will trigger them, and now that thing is the worst thing in the world, even though last week this other thing was the worst thing in the world, and they just say to us, God, I wish I could go back to that thing because that was so easy actually in comparison to this thing. It's always the shiny new object for OCD of this is now the most important thing in the world. Yeah.
Yeah, I run an OCD women's group. We meet monthly, and the women in the group always joke about that. They'll say, "Oh God, I miss having POCD. That was
Yeah.
that was
Right. Yeah.
that was a lot easier than what I'm dealing with right
Yeah.
now. I wish I
Yeah.
could go back to that." And of course, when you're in it, that's clearly not how you feel.
Right. Or when the other group members, who are, especially the new one, says, "Oh, I wish I had that kind of OCD," right? And everybody just goes, "Yeah, no, no, you don't."
Yeah,
Yeah, no,
yeah. No, you don't. No, you don't.
mhm. So we've got the conferences. There'll be more. There are books to write. There are groups to run. What do you look forward to in the mental health field coming up next? What are things that keep you excited and motivated?
Yeah, I'm part of the Moms with OCD SIG. I'm very excited that the IOCDF started these special interest groups. And even though my OCD experience was, um, you know, specifically in the postpartum period, they have let me join their club, which I'm very
Oh,
grateful
that was
for
very
because
nice
it's
of them. Yes.
an amazing
Yeah.
group of women. And I'm excited about some of the things that they're doing there, specifically Postpartum Support International, which is the leading international agency or organization that
Yeah.
educates on the perinatal stuff. I think there's some areas that we could do a better job in educating what OCD is, what OCD is not, the difference between OCD and postpartum psychosis. So I know that there is some effort to bridge that gap. I think maybe the IOCDF has been in contact with them.
Good.
So specifically, I'm excited to think about expanding working with the perinatal population.
Yeah. I
Um,
spoke at one of their conferences once, actually. That was really fun. Hmm.
well, they should keep inviting you back
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
there were some tropes about OCD that I think none of us would find
Oh,
too funny, but everybody there, you know,
yeah. It
making
was
a joke.
pre-COVID, so it's time, I think, to maybe
Yeah, so
get that
I'm
relationship going
excited
again.
to
Yeah.
think about
Mhm.
ways that we can bridge that gap between the
Okay.
perinatal space and the OCD space. Um, I'm excited about the research that's coming out about psychedelics as well in the treatment of OCD. Um, that's something that I really enjoy learning about, specifically having alternatives to things like SSRIs. So,
That's
yeah.
awesome. And thank all of you for watching again the Get to Know OCD podcast. We really appreciate you. And if you like it, subscribe to our NoCD YouTube channel. And if you're looking for help for OCD or related conditions, check us out at nocd.com. That's nocd.com. We'll be back again with other episodes soon on the Get to Know OCD podcast. Until then, be good to yourselves because OCD isn't going to be. So go ahead and take some practice. Try to be nice to you. We'll see you soon.